Ja, ich auch.
Foundational for me.
Wo hast du gewohnt? In welcher Stadt?
Somebody's showing
Yeah,
right.
No, I used to live in Germany too. We were in the Stuttgart area. How about you?
We were in Berblingen, Stuttgart.
Yeah, Berblingen.
7th Army headquarters.
Okay, we were in we lived in a little housing development called Pattonville, but I think my dad worked on Robinson Barracks. You know, that's the Ludwigsburg area.
Oh, right, yeah. right.
The greater Stuttgart military community. Cool. Say, hey.
Yeah.
Carol, Ahimatamet very Hebrew.
Just a second. Let me put my phones on. Wait a minute. Just a minute.
Was that Palau?
You want to say hello to everyone? All right, don't say hello to
Oh,
everyone.
Monica, you asked.
I was asking you, Ahimatamet very Hebrew.
אני מדברת קצת עברית. את מדברת עברית?
I was asking you if you speak Hebrew.
אני מבינה, את מדברת עברית?
Oh, okay. I don't understand. Is that the?
I asked you in Hebrew. Do you speak Hebrew?
In none. Law.
As את לא מדברת עברית.
I would say you מעט.
Oh, okay. A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Un petit peu, right.
I don't speak very
I'm
much
enjoying
anymore
what's happening, right? Hearing the conversation in Hebrew. That's wonderful.
Well, you should have heard, I just heard my last lesson with Mr. Barak, and I was so embarrassed. Why he puts up with me, I do not know.
You're lovely.
I'll let you in on a secret. Do you want to know why?
Because I'm beautiful.
Okay.
That's true.
I'll make sure. Okay, my connection should be stable.
Eve.
Okay, now you should be able to hear me better. So do you want to know why?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
You sure you want to know?
Absolutely.
Because I need all the help I can get.
So let me tell you why.
Why?
It's only a question of alternatives. If I'm not with you, I have to be with my kids. They're, so it's easier. It's simply a question of alternatives.
So that's
there you go. Now you know the secret.
I thought I was one of your kids, the way I do that.
Yeah.
But you
now you know the secret.
And turn around and ask me.
It's just it's psychology of people. They make something complicated out of it. It's actually avoiding suffering, seeking pleasure. So at least avoiding suffering, right? As much. Sometimes I get into class. Depends on the time of the class, right? But sometimes I get into class and then I say to the students, listen, today I have to pay you because now I don't have to be, somewhere else. Right.
Well, when you have me as your student, you are suffering.
Listen, but it's in Israel they make every country has like the scapegoat ethnic group or whatnot. So in Israel, it is like Polish women. They make jokes about, or at least they used to. Today, not as much, but they used to make jokes about Polish women. And there is even in Tel Aviv, there is a store called the Polish Woman. Where they have all of these funny stuff. Anyway, so they say that a Polish man goes straight to heaven. You know why?
Why?
Because you already had hell here,
Well, can you imagine what my husband goes through, Mr. Barak?
Okay, guys. I'm saying,
Natal?
yeah.
Natal? You
Yeah?
know, I am here and I still have my handbag.
Okay. So,
What,
do
watch
you?
what you say about women.
No, I said
Who is
Polish
a
women.
handbag?
I said Polish women. I didn't say women. I said Polish women.
Still
You know, I
women.
had. Let me tell you. Tell you a story. A true story. I had a Polish lady in one of my classes. You know, I've been doing it for many years. So I had a Polish lady. She was a good person. She had a great sense of humor. So you know, she was. Once I told her that they make jokes in Israel about Polish women. She insisted on me telling jokes. So we would start like almost every lesson with a joke about Polish women. So that was all kinds of like, how do you call a beautiful woman in Poland?
Tell us.
A tourist.
Oh no.
Again,
Oh.
these are just jokes. You can change the like the country and so forth. Anyway, guys, enough jokes. We have a lot of work today, and we're not going to. I don't know if we'll get to a full hour, but we'll start. We'll do 30 minutes, and we'll see if I still have, if I can go on. So, what I want to do is I want to continue with this, with a history of the Hebrew language, and yeah, can you see this well?
Yes.
Very good, very good. So, last time we've talked about um, the Proto-Semitic language, or more so about the Proto-Semitic people, or the people who spoke the Proto-Semitic. Okay, we've seen how the these when they lived, roughly where they lived. We've talked about different ways of trying to answer these fascinating questions, though as I said, it was a little bit on kind of a prehistorical level. And today we're continuing with this journey, but rather examining not the Proto-Semitic so much itself, but rather the characteristic of the Semitic family, or subfamily, as we've explained, which reflects upon the Proto-Semitic, naturally, because if you see all of the grandkids of all of the cousins in a certain family, they all are, let's say, 7 feet tall, okay? You can assume that the grandparents were tall people. It's highly unlikely that the grandparents were all 5 feet and the grandkids are all 7 feet, okay? Or they all have blue eyes, all of the grandkids. So you can assume that the grandparents also had blue eyes. Probably, again, it's a little bit more complicated, and genetics and hereditary genetics are complicated, but through the examination of the various different Semitic languages, we can deduce something about the Proto-Semitic and about the family in general. Last time we've talked about this kind of a family tree. Again, it is a little bit simplified because it's not all, a language is not just about its uh, or family tree, but sometimes you learn stuff from the neighbors. So if I let's say play basketball, I don't. Okay, it doesn't mean that my father is a basketball player. I learned it in the neighborhood. Okay, so sometimes there are things that are related to the place where you are rather than to your family. Okay, and that's one of these lines of information, or one of the things that makes you what you or are your neighbors or the surrounding. And the same goes for languages. So it's not just the family tree, but again, for simplification, this is kind of the family tree that we've talked about last week. And as I said, today I want to start talking about some of the characteristics of the Semitic languages. Again, I we're not, this is by no means, not even an attempt to make an exhaustive comparative Semitics overview over all of the phenomena that are in common between the different Semitic languages, but we'll try to taste some here and there. And maybe by the end of our discussion, we can have kind of a bit of a broad brushstroke family understanding of that family. Obviously, we'll move on to the western side of the family and northwestern, specifically the Canaanite branch, and we'll get to the Hebrew. I should say that even though we're not focusing on the Hebrew now, we will give special place for the Hebrew, as it is the goal of our series is to focus on the Hebrew, and we'll kind of skip here and there to use the Hebrew to see these phenomena. Okay, so bear with me for a second. I want to be able to see the chat. Okay, right. Also influenced by other families, getting conquered or conquering. Sometimes it's not just getting conquered. I'm referring to Clark's remark. I'll give you an example, a very interesting example, and an example that is relevant for the Semitic languages. Sometimes, okay, rarely, okay, the conqueror decides to adopt the language of the nation he conquered, okay? Not common, but happens. So for instance, in the realm of the Semitic family, we do have a case like that. The Persians, whose language is not Semitic, right? It's Indo-European. It's closer to English than to the Hebrew. It's not close to the English, don't make mistakes, but it is of the same family, okay? They decided to use as their official language the Aramaic language, which is a Semitic language, okay? So that's not just being conquered, but also sometimes the influence can go either way sometimes. Now, I want to finish something that we started last time. And last time we've talked about the place where the Semitic languages came from, and we didn't really, as I said, we'll jump to the Hebrew and jump to the Bible sometimes. And for me, the whole discussion of the roots of the Semitic family, or the subfamily, as we said, is taking me back to Joshua 24:2-3, which talks about that, okay? And let's see these two verses, okay? Because they talk about the origins of the biblical family, okay? When Joshua is talking to the people, when they are renewing essentially their covenant with God towards the end of the days of Joshua, he speaks to the people and says the following. Let's see this. And since we have so many Hebrew readers here, Georgie, would you read aloud verse 2? I see your hand is up.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, okay. In fact, I raised my hands for a different purpose. Okay, anyway, I will read. That was a question. Okay.
So let's
okay
first you first pay with reading, and then you and then you get to ask a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Vayomer Yehoshua El Kol Ha-Yam Ki Ko Amar Adonai Elohe Israel Bayer Ha-Nahar Yeshvu Avotiekem Meyolam Tarak Avi Abraham Yavie
Va'avi Nahor.
Wa'avi Nahor.
Right, you can pronounce it as a wa. Certainly, if we're talking about the Proto-Semitic, you are probably correct. Yeah, go ahead.
Vayavdu
But it's
Elohim.
preferable not to pronounce the ayin as a y. So if you want to go with a vav as a y, that's wonderful. But it has to be wayavdu, not not the ayin is a guttural letter. We'll talk about the ayin soon enough, roughly.
Okay. So I have to just like swallow the ayin.
Right, like gulping.
Okay.
Take
Yeah.
something and drink. Right.
Yeah. Vayavdu. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Elohim Ehiriyim.
Right. So Joshua said to the whole people, "Thus says the Lord God of Israel, be'ever hanahar, beyond the river." Actually, the term ever hanahar, be'ever hanahar, is a technical term. The region west of the Euphrates River, between the Euphrates and the Mediterranean, was named Ever Nahar in Hebrew, or in Aramaic Avar Nahara, or in Akkadian Eber Nari. They're all the same. Okay, so beyond the river, which means west of the Euphrates, Yashavu Avotechem Me'olam. Your forefathers dwelt since ever. Okay, so where did the forefathers of the people of Israel dwelt since ever? Me'olam, which means really from ancient times, as long as I can remember. Okay, Joshua says to the people, we come from beyond the river. We come from the area between the Euphrates and the Mediterranean. Okay, if you remember correctly, and I'll find it for you. I'll find the map that we have seen last week. The area of which we've talked about when we've talked about the origin of the Semitic languages is exactly that area of beyond the river, of between the Euphrates. Okay, let's share this. Bear with me for a second. Can you see it? No. Okay. Let's. Now I'll show you where. Okay. Okay. Can you see this map, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you see
Yes.
where the origin of the Proto-Semitic is, according to the best scholarship available, including the statistics that I've mentioned last time and computation? We go back to the book of Joshua saying, listen, as back as we can go, this is the area where your forefathers come from. So the recorded history that Joshua had in his mind was identical to the best of scholarship that we have about the origin of the Semitic languages. So that's a little bit about this connection between the two. Okay, so your fathers come from that beyond the river region, okay, where they served the foreign gods. Va'ekach, and let's see verse 3. Just a second. I'll have someone read verse 3. Don't be shy.
I want to read.
Okay,
Can I-
so yes, you can. But next one, preferably, raise. You don't need to raise a hand literally, but next to your name,
I
like
don't know how to raise my hand.
Okay, so you can write me in the chat box, but probably that
Okay.
is also an issue. It's all right.
Okay,
So-
okay,
Okay, so go with verse 3.
cool.
Here, verse 3. Do you see on
You want me
screen?
to read?
Oh, you wanted to read.
Oh, who's gonna read?
You said you want to read.
Yes.
So can you read aloud verse 3?
Okay. Va'ekach et Avihem את אברהם מעבר הנהר ועולה אותו ואל ארץ
Kenan, that's a kaf.
Canaan, yeah, let's
Right.
see.
Va'ekach et
Kenan.
avichem et Avraham me'ever hanahar. So I took your father, literally father, contextually meaning ancestor, forefather, et Avraham, Abram, me'ever hanahar, from that region that is called Ever hanahar. You remember that region between the river Euphrates and the Mediterranean Sea. Va'olech oto bechol eretz Canaan, and I, took him around. I gave him a tour of the whole of the land of Canaan. Okay, by God's grace, when you all come as a group, we'll also do the same. We'll go through all the land of Canaan. We should organize, a group tour. Very
Yes.
good. Yeah. So, as I said, we want to touch a little bit about the characteristics of the Semitic languages, and I want to start with phonology. So, what is phonology? Comes from the Greek phone, like your telephone, microphone, speakerphone. Okay, all of these are the word phone is a sound. Okay, and every language has its sounds. Okay, the way we speak, the way we make sound really is by interfering with the air that we breathe, that we take out of our lungs. So we inhale air, and while we exhale it, we kind of stop it or limit it or change the way it goes. And all of these changes, they create sound. Now, not all sounds are sounds that are relevant for each language, okay? So in Hebrew or in English or in any other language, we have sounds that make a difference and sounds that do not make difference. Sounds that are contrastive and sounds that are just sounds, okay? And they don't mean anything in that very language. They might mean something in a different language. They might actually make a difference in a different language, okay? And I know for those of us who speak one language or are familiar with one family of languages, it might sometimes be a kind of an unusual idea. I want to share like a personal story when it hit me hard. Okay, and some of you might have heard this story in the past. Okay, when I volunteered in the Ukraine about 15 years ago, 14 years ago. I volunteered. I went there to teach Judaism, to teach Hebrew, 14 years ago. And I decided, listen, I have an opportunity to learn a language. Why not? As soon as I, set foot, I left, in the Ukraine. I knew nothing back then, even since I was in the part of the Ukraine that is close to Russia. They spoke Russian, and generally back then Russian was more spoken. Today, definitely in the West, you can hear Ukrainian more. Anyway, so I decided I'll speak Russian without knowing it, but I'll just speak, and as much as they correct me, I don't know anything. I'll start asking, how do you say this? How do you say that? And I'll stop talking. I'll make mistakes, but who cares? I'll make mistakes. That's by the way, my number one tip for learning languages. Just don't care about the mistakes. and you'll get them better over time. Anyway, so I was in the Ukraine, and I was talking, and they had two different sounds, which they sounded the same for me. I was saying a mouse or a bear, and it actually sounded the same for me. Mish and wish, I couldn't tell the difference between the two words. Some of you, when I now pronounced it, couldn't tell the difference between this type of an M and that type of an M, because in English we don't distinguish these two types. In Hebrew, we don't distinguish these two types of M followed by a soft or a hard sign. I'm not getting into the Slavic, grammar of it, the Russian grammar behind it, but I couldn't tell the difference. And they made fun of me because I wanted to say one thing and I actually said a different thing. And later on, it happened to them with Hebrew, and I got this, and it was so fun for me that I noticed that they, had the same problem, but with different Hebrew letters, which again, they don't have in Russian. But that's the idea of minimal pairs, okay? And I want to show you, again, it's not all of the possible sounds in the world, but there is what's known as the IPA or IPA, okay? IPA, some of you, I'm sure, have heard about the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet, but some of you have not, and I want to share the IPA alphabet, okay? And, right. Let's see. Okay, can you see this chart and additional signs?
Yes.
Fine. Okay. This is the IPA, the International Phonetics Alphabet. And you can see so many signs. First of all, the consonants here, okay, in so many different languages, okay, including consonants that we, in most languages, we wouldn't make anything out of them. Right? This doesn't mean anything in Hebrew, in English, in any of the Indo-European languages or Slavic or whatever, or Semitic languages. But in some languages, these sounds are actually, they make a difference, right? We've talked about contrastive, we've talked about minimal pairs, and I'll get to minimal pairs in a minute. You can see these are known as clicks, by the way. So a bilabial click, do you know what a bilabial click is? Next time, now we are all with social distancing, but next time you see your loved one, you can give them a bilabial click on the cheek.
Yeah.
Because that's like kiss, right? It's using the two lips, and it's a click. So that's a bilabial click. And obviously it doesn't mean anything in Hebrew or in English, but there are languages in which it is really a distinguishing sound, okay? A sound that makes a difference, a contrastive sound. Now, that's consonants. Let's talk about vowels. So there are so many vowels here. Do you see this trapezium that we have here?
Yes.
Yes.
Where my cursor is?
Yes.
Okay, these are all different vowels. Okay, think about it. You have, if you take all of these possibilities, you have here dozens. And actually, these are not all. There is kind of a supplementum and differences, and there are tonemic languages where even the tone of what you're saying is a contrastive quality. Okay, it makes a difference if you say again, I don't want to give examples, but I in tonemic languages and languages, if you say ma or ma, these are different things, okay, because the tone actually is a contrastive quality. Okay, so that's a little bit about phonetics. And again, I want to go back to the Hebrew so we can understand how that affects our understanding of Semitic languages and Hebrew later on. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, we have here two Hebrew words, okay, which demonstrate this concept of minimal pairs, okay. And I also have a modern Hebrew example for you, just so you know, next time you speak to a modern Hebrew speaker who does not happen to be your Hebrew teacher, okay? So let's read these two Hebrew words, just two words, guys. So who's gonna help us with these two words that we have here? This one and this one. Lisa, go ahead.
After you saying about making mistakes, I thought I'll go for it. So
Very good.
Nishat, and then Nishat.
Right, nishchat. And really, I would pronounce it exactly the same because I'm a modern Hebrew speaker. So nishchat and nishchat. But nonetheless, I can see when I look at these words, I see that the meaning of each word is different. Can you translate each of them? I think you can.
I can say what was on top of them. It was slaughtered and it was ruined.
Right, two different words. They sound the same when I pronounce them because I'm a modern Hebrew speaker, nishchat and nishchat. But in biblical Hebrew, they mean two different things. So obviously there are different letters, different phones, again, phonemes. I don't want to get into too technical here, okay? But it shows me that the tav and the tet were different and they made a difference, okay? So they are contrastive, okay? So that's the tav, and the tet was pronounced differently. We'll talk about how it was pronounced soon enough, obviously. I added another example here at the bottom, which is interesting, and I want your opinion, guys, as native English speakers. Can one tell the difference between steal and steal as in taking what's not yours, in your opinion? Because we have still, that's an English speaker could distinguish between steal and steal or steal. Yeah. But can you tell the difference between steal the metal and steal taking something that is not yours based on the just hearing it or
Only
pronouncing
by
it? What do you make?
No, no.
No. Okay, so that's the common answer. You can make a difference between, you can hear the difference between still as in not moving and steal as the metal or taking something that is not yours. But if you ask a modern Hebrew speaker about these, please write the word steal in Hebrew, or write the word steal, you know, either way, either still as in not moving or steal as taking something that is not yours. If he uses the International Phonetics alphabet, he can show the difference between the two. But if he is using a Hebrew script, the Hebrew script is not distinguishing the length of the vowel. So basically, he would write the same. And indeed, if you speak with modern Hebrew speakers, they would have hard time distinguishing between still as in not moving and steal as in taking something that is not yours. Okay, because not every language distinguishes every feature. So a little bit about the Semitic languages now, and that's related to the phonetics, related to the way we speak. And I want to talk about triads, but don't worry, we're not talking about Chinese organized crime. Okay, right? Thank you, guys. We have to find a way to mark, you know, when a joke goes through. You know, no, not everybody has their cameras on, and I can't see anyway. So anyway, So we're not talking about Chinese organized crime. If you want to talk about it, I'm sure there are people more certified in the matter. But the triads that we're talking about are 3 consonants, and the Semitic languages were probably organized in a sense according to, or some a considerable amount of consonants were organized in this way. So we have a voiced, voiceless or unvoiced version, and an emphatic version of that sound. So so let's see these examples on screen. We have the D sound, D, okay, like English D. We have a T, okay, and I want you to notice how the D and the T are exactly the same sound with one difference, okay. You can put, if you want, we'll do it several times here to play with these. But put your hand on the base of your throat, okay, and try to pronounce a T and then a D. T, D, T, D. If you're sensitive, okay, and actually a better example would be with a Z and the S, and we'll do it in a second as well. You could hear the trembling of the vocal cords there. Let's do the Z and the S because they're muy fun. Okay, so put your hand here, okay, and go alternate between the Z sound and the S sound. Z, z, z. If you did that, guys, I'm sure you felt that your tongue is in the same place, and the flow of the air is the same flow of the air. The only distinction, the only difference between the z and the s is that you don't have that trembling, you don't have the vocal cords trembling. That is what we call a voiced consonant, okay? A voiced versus voiceless or unvoiced consonant, okay? So we have a triad though, not just 2, but 3 consonants. So what is the third one? The third one is the emphatic consonant. What is emphatic? Good question. Okay, and it's not as simple as one might think. Okay, so emphatic consonants. I mean, let's see. This we need an English reader. Jerry, since you are our like a radio voice, go ahead. Jerry?
The emphatic consonants are articulated further back in the mouth and with greater tension of the articulatory organs that in the case for non-emphatics. Although these emphatics have no equivalents in many languages, they do occur in nearly all Semitic languages, Arabic,
Right, so,
Aramaic.
Right. So we have here bad news. First of all, they don't occur in English. So since they don't occur in English, English speakers would naturally have harder time pronouncing them. Okay, but the good news is they occur in almost all Semitic languages. I'll give you an example for a Semitic language in which they don't occur, or they don't really occur. That's modern Hebrew. You know, modern Hebrew speakers, they don't really pronounce the emphatic consonants. And I'll give you another example. And then if you can think hard about the common denominator of these 2 Semitic languages and why they don't have an emphatic pronunciation in those languages, then you will have given me a good answer. So the other language the other Semitic language in which we don't have an emphatic pronunciation is Maltese, which is spoken in the island of Malta, right? So what's the common denominator of the Israeli Hebrew and Maltese, which is really a version of Arabic? But what might be the reason for both these languages to not pronounce the emphatic consonants in an emphatic way, guys? Russ, I see you opened your mic. Do you have an answer, Rosales?
Sure, I think European influence, Western European influence.
Yay! Yay! Yeah.
Shukran.
Yeah. You were up one. You're welcome. Yeah. So I'm sending you a coupon for a cup of coffee in Arizona.
That's why. Would that be why the modern Hebrew is? Because it's
Right.
European kind of.
Right. Nick, the answer of Rosales was an accurate answer. In modern Hebrew, I was actually playing it a little bit because I should have said Ashkenazi Hebrew, but that would be even easier. The modern Hebrew really has a kind of a mixed convention between Ashkenazi and Sephardi, between Jews who were influenced by European languages and Jews who were under Arabic-speaking areas or Islamic culture. And the pronunciation of the consonants, again, generally in modern Hebrew, is influenced by is a inheritance of the Ashkenazi pronunciation of the Hebrew, which was influenced by the European languages. Maltese, this language spoken in Malta, is basically Arabic, but it was influenced by the languages of Italy, Sicily, and others. And so in both these languages, we don't have emphatic consonants. Why? Because we don't have those in European languages. So generally, again, we have an example of how we can learn about the Semitic languages and even about the Proto-Semitic based on the picture that we have around us. Because if someone says, oh, just a second, my neighbor is an Israeli and he doesn't have emphatic consonants in his language. My other neighbor is Arabic, he does. My third neighbor is Aramean, and he does. So how should I know if the Proto-Semitic had emphatic consonants or not? And then we should stop and think. And if we're smart as Rosales is, we can think about the different languages, see the picture, and say to ourselves, just a moment, I see why these two languages, well, it's not that the other languages added this feature of emphatic consonants, but these two languages, Ashkenazi Hebrew, or modern Hebrew for that matter, and Maltese, they lost this quality because of historical reasons. And I find it fascinating. So way to go, Russ. Now, the pronunciation of the emphatics, Susanna, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. When I looked at the first set of triads, you had d, t, and t. I'm not sure where the tongue goes on the emphatic.
Right, exactly. That's exactly the question that we're dealing with now.
So
you can see on screen, do you see on screen the T with the dot underneath?
Yeah, that's the emphatic one, correct?
That's the emphatic. Now we have to explain what are emphatics, because this explanation that Jerry read was as grammarians. Grammarians, listen, they are like doctors who like to say complicated stuff, words for simple stuff. So instead of saying you have a cold, they would say you have an inflammatory inflammation in your upper respiratory system, or you're sneezing. So grammarians are even worse in that sense. Okay, so we have a lot of words here not explaining exactly what is an emphatic consonant, and really we have two options, because why have one, right? We have two options when we look around in the different Semitic languages. Again, as we did with the question of having emphatics or not. Now we should ask ourselves, what is an emphatic consonant? So when we look at the Arabic, for instance, or the Aramaic, we get a combination of the T sound with the sound, valorized or pharyngalized sound. So all in all, the emphatic sound is th. if we believe the pronunciation of the Arabic or the Aramaic. If we look at the Ethiopian Semitic languages or the modern South Arabian languages, the emphatic consonant is actually t. It's with a glottal stop, glottalized sound, a glottalized consonant. Okay, you might be familiar with this in Philippine languages. Some have these, or Thai, or again, I'm not an expert on the languages of the East, but this sound as opposed to the sound. Okay, it's the most fun when you ask the students to pronounce these. So two options, and now we have to ask ourselves, what was the case for the Hebrew? Okay, right. Was the Hebrew emphatic consonant pronounced t or t? Okay, is it t or t? Is it, again, if we go back to these, is it k or k? Is it s or s? Okay, I know it's hard for me as well. The glottalized ones, because I don't have them in modern Israeli Hebrew. Okay, so that's a good question. What was the situation for the Hebrew? Okay, this was a very smart man and a very, I should say, if I say imaginative about the scholar, is that a compliment or a degradation? I don't know if I'm saying, but he had good imagination, and he also thought about this question. And all evidence, or all serious evidence, there are some opinions that the Hebrew had a glottalized version of the emphatics, but most scholars and most evidence lean towards the other direction. So we're talking about valorized or pharyngalized pronunciation, the sound like gomping. Okay. So, but what I want to show you is something that was noted by Naftali Herz Turchiner. Later on, he named himself, he changed his name to a more Hebrew version, Tur Sinai. Tur means mountain in Aramaic, a crag or a mountain. So he looked at the ancient Hebrew script, which we have here on screen. We'll have to talk about script, obviously, as part of our journey, but now you'll take, that's not the main discussion at the moment. And he looked very well, and all of a sudden he noted something. He said, okay, the Tav has this X sign. The sign for the Tav in ancient Hebrew is an X. By the way, the word Tav means mark, and that's marking, right? The most intuitive marking that a person can think of is an X, because the combination of the two lines gives you an exact point. Anyway, he noted the Tav. He said, oh, that's an X. He noted the Ein, which was a circle, and boom, it hit him. Can you see what he saw, guys? That, okay, right, he saw the X-Men. That's what I see when I see the tet. I don't know, some of you are too old to remember to know this comic book or a TV series, but the X-Men, their sign looks like an ancient Hebrew tet. So that's what I see. But he saw a combination of the Tav and the Ein. He saw an X within a circle. Okay, and he said, oh, so that's probably another nice addendum to the proof, or to the idea that we are talking about a pharyngalized or valorized sound. Okay, so again, that's the common belief, the common convention in scholarship. It's not the phonetics of the biblical Hebrew is fascinating, but it's not my, like, I didn't do a PhD on it, but that's the common convention. And now I will take your questions, and next time we'll talk about other characteristics of the Semitic languages. Yeah, Georgie.
My question was intending to bring the bar mitzvah. I think it is for the kids when they are growing up. Am I right?
Yes, that is
Yeah.
correct.
Then, when is the time when a person more mature into studying Aramaic than other, because they have to go through many different languages to become really scholarly?
Okay, so first of all, not everybody become really scholarly, understandable.
But at least
Secondly,
in bar mitzvah, will they learn some sort of Aramaic?
Okay, let's talk a little bit about it. Bar mitzvah, which is literally from the Aramaic, son of a commandment, or someone who belongs now, whose the commandments are relevant for now, is just the stage where a boy turns into a man. And it is premised on the physical changes that occur around that time. So if to put it on a specific day, then you turn 13. For girls, by the way, when you turn 12, it is related to the cycle, right? With girls becoming a woman or becoming a man. We have also to remember that in ancient times, you did not have to sit and learn through high school and through college and through university in order to be able to provide for yourself. You just joined whichever craft or agricultural work that your family did. So in most cases, a 13-year-old man was, yeah, he wasn't fully developed, but he could work, okay? So that's a little bit about it. Now, if you're asking about common practices or ancient practices, there is the Mishnah in the Tractate of Avot that specifies the different stages. So, ben 5 shanim lemikra, ben 10 shanim lemishnah, ben 13 lemitzvot, ben 15 leGemara, and so forth. Different stages of life and different like stages of learning, or different time of life and different stages of learning. So 5, you start reading the Bible. 10, you start with a Mishnah. 13, you become a man as far as your obligation to keep the commandments. 15, you learn the Talmud. That's according to the Mishnah in the Tractate of Avot. If you're asking about common practices, then it's completely different, and it depends on what kind of a Jew you are, and denomination and personal preferences and so forth and so on. However, having said all of that, it has nothing to do with the phonetics, with the phonology of the Semitic languages. So maybe I should have opened with that. But anyway, I have this flow. When I'm asked, I have to answer. Nick.
Yeah. Would one could somebody kind of figure out if it was if it's a glottal, or what's the other one?
Yes. So yeah, as I said, the common.
If they went to, because Hebrew would be from probably around the place of Abraham, right? Or somewhere around there in the Chaldeans.
Oh, so first of all, just a second, Nick, there are so many questions to go with it. Where is Ur of the Chaldeans? That's a good question, right? It could be, don't think that this is something agreed upon everybody. Okay, so that's
okay.
Already.
So if you went to somewhere around the Euphrates and in that area and studied how they would pronounce it, would that be a good way to start?
I'll ask you, Nick. If I go to where do you live?
In New Mexico.
In New Mexico. If I go to New Mexico, would that be a good way to learn about the native languages in America 3,000 years ago?
No, not necessarily.
Exactly, not necessarily. So exactly the same, I would say 3,000 or even more, 4,000 or 6,000 years ago, exactly the same would be my answer. You have to understand that there is a history behind it. So
Sure,
even
and
even
languages change. Yeah,
right.
they evolve too.
And not just the evolvement of languages, but history. In 1492,
Yeah,
bunch of Spaniard found out the new
colonialization.
Americas,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all of a sudden,
colonial.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
the
colonialization.
picture changed.
Yeah,
Okay, so the same happened.
yeah,
If just to put it in the context of the Semitic languages, let's say people were sitting there, but in the 7th century, you have an Arab conquest of all of the all of the Middle East, and before that, you have a Greek
right.
conquering and Persian. So much have changed. That is not to
Yeah,
deny the option. Just a second. After having knocked some of the wind out of your question, but
yeah,
I will grant it some merit. This idea,
yeah,
the people again, we don't, it's not that we don't have any information at all. We should consider what are the common pronunciations of the Hebrew. If we can explain them in a certain way, like we did with the Ashkenazi Hebrew, understanding it's influenced by European languages and so forth and so on. So making a long story short, there is a good substantiated evidence to suggest that the Hebrew emphatics were pharyngalized, were valorized, were rather than
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you for the question, and we're all thinking together about these issues. Yeah, Russ, I owe you a question after your beautiful answer before.
Yes, I wanted to know, how would you pronounce the tet then in ancient Hebrew, and also the tav sav, tav tav?
Okay. These are different questions. Maybe now that you've asked them, we'll have to get into the allophones of the Bet Gimel Dalet Kaf Pe and Tav, but I wasn't planning on doing it. Let's talk a little bit about the emphatics. As I said, we pronounce them with a secondary articulation in the larynx. Okay, so we have the T followed by the sound, so ta, and the K followed by a sound, and the S followed by an sound, sa. Okay, that would be, as I said, the emphatics according to most scholars and the traditions of the Hebrew, all significant traditions that I know of. So that's ta, sa. Okay, now as far as the tav and the t, the s or t and th, this is a different question, because these are not different phonemes. These are not distinguishing sounds. These are different pronunciations of the same sound. Okay, and I don't know. I won't get into it in detail today, but I will have to address this definitely, and I will address it down the road somewhere in a certain point, because this is already a question within the Hebrew, possibly Hebrew and Aramaic, not so much in the Semitic languages in general. So keep that question in mind, and I hope that if we are able to continue with these with this lecture series, we will definitely talk about that. Okay, deal?
A deal.
A deal. Right, not dil, right. That's something that me as an Israeli, I couldn't tell, but yeah. Yes, so Nick, we took your question. Russ, Susan, we took your question, or you have a different question because your hand is still up?
I have a different question. I was looking at the other chart and a couple things came to mind. One, if you were going to take that amalgamation of symbols from two letters creating a third sound, you'd have to be somewhat more consistent than just sort of one, and that would sort of make
Right. Listen, I'm not saying it's a good evidence. No, I said it was imaginative.
But
I
that
just
was
thought it's
one
cool.
point.
That's that. Listen, I am completely with you. I don't think it is systematic. If you would, you could have added simply a circle around the sign for the cough, and a circle around the other signs to mark pharyngalization. Sure, I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying it's historical, but it is fun and it is cool, and I thought it's worth mentioning, and it's beautiful.
It's fun. But the other point then also is, it seems to me that the same alphabet, by and large, once you got out of the hieroglyphic stage, you know, merged into these same letters themselves are used in all the Semitic or in most of the Semitic languages. So, in a lot of like Aramaic.
Okay.
Arabic,
That's a good
Hebrew.
question. We're not talking about script today. So again, you keep that question, and I promise that if we continue, we will talk about different scripts. I actually had a little bit of this here, but it's not for today, probably not next time. When we talk about script, we'll have to address the question of script, ancient Hebrew script and modern Hebrew script and whatnot. And last but not least, Jerry.
Yeah, my question was about script, but I'm going to hold it off till the next class or the class down the road, because
Down
I'm
the road.
interested.
It won't be in the next class. I don't think we'll get there that quickly.
I'm just interested in where vowels were. Are they also ancient as well? Were they in any of the scripts? Even in the say in Hammurabi's text.
Okay, so that's a completely different question. We can answer it. Okay, I'll answer it quickly, but it's not like a systematic discussion. The Akkadian or the Babylonian in which Hammurabi's law code is written has a completely different writing system. It is a cuneiform script, okay, which is written in a different technique and on a different material. And it is mainly a syllabic script. It's really a combination of an ideographic and a syllabic script, okay, in which you mark a syllable. And as part of the syllable, you also mark the vowel, okay? So yes, the vowels were represented in Hammurabi's law code. Maybe when we get to that, maybe we'll even read law or something out of the 282 laws that we have there. I remember that when I studied Akkadian, I actually had to translate some of them in the exam, but from the cuneiform. Don't worry, I won't do that to you. First of all, because I don't want to embarrass myself. I can't remember any cuneiform by now, probably for the life of me. And secondly, because it's really difficult, the cuneiform script, to remember, because they had, first of all, they all look the same. Not really, but it's hard to identify, and it's really
takes a lot more
of
symbols,
signs.
doesn't it?
Right, it has many symbols because it's syllabic.
Yeah.
Right, and yeah, so it's a nightmare, but I had to go through that. I was questioned by fire. Okay, so that's that. I'll see you next week. I hope that by tomorrow I'll have a set curriculum for next week. What I can tell you is that Monday we'll have we have Dr. Tamar Meir speaking about the Book of Ruth and feminism in the Orthodox Judaism. I think it should be interesting. That's for Monday. Wednesday we'll have Professor Tov. Possibly Thursday we'll have Dr. Dantelsky, the donkey guy. And we'll see. I hope that by tomorrow we have a set schedule. I will. Yeah, Elliot, do you have a question?
I'm sorry, just real quickly, who was the philologist in the picture today?
Oh, Naftali Herz Turchiner. He was, maybe a word about him. As I said, he had a good imagination. Sometimes he was a little bit, scholars looked at him as not being very cautious, okay? He won the same prize as Professor Tov did. Professor Tov won it in 2009. He won it in 1956, I think. Israel Prize. And when he got it, he was very angry that some younger people got it before him. So he wrote a letter. Anyway. So that's that. They were interesting chaps. He continued the work of Eliezer ben Yehuda, who started writing the modern Hebrew dictionary. So he continued him and many other stuff. So that's a little bit about.
Nathaniel, can you write his name? Can you write his name on the chat?
Yeah, I can write, but I'll do you one better. I don't think that he has a Wikipedia in English. I looked it up, I think, as part of the preparation for today, but let's see if I have. No, I see an organic farm resort after his name, and I see a garden. Oh, he does have an English Wikipedia. Yay! Good thing, but very short. So I'm attaching it to good to be corrected. So I'm sending you his Wikipedia entry in the chat box. You got it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sure.
Thank
And as
you.
always, it has been an absolute pleasure, guys. At least for me. I hope you didn't suffer too much.
No,
Bye bye.
Love it. Thank you. Toda.
You're welcome.